Hello, everyone. Welcome to Combox and First Empire. So today we're going to talk about different balls that Jarrod has, like or
Wait, what?
knows about, I would say.
My left one, my right one.
The kind of different balls he knows about. So all the different masteries that people have, I would say, garnered over the years, and deep diving into history, deep diving into different aspects of the game. He's already done a video on it, but we just thought that why don't we just deep dive it into every aspect of it, could actually see the cross pollination happening, the evolution happening, and how it has affected the modern game, different eras, all those stuff. So, like, I've been shooting certain reels on the group also to kind of bug him throughout the day because I really liked the video and I was like trying to relate it to the stuff I've done in the past. So, over to you, Jarrod.
Yeah, no, it was funny. I was commentating a game and it was for Talksport, and John Norman said, "Oh, at lunch break we'll do something on like all the different cricket deliveries." And I was like, "Yeah," because I think it was because of Sam Curran and his Moonball, right? I was like, "That's a good idea." And so I googled it, and I was a bit shocked that there wasn't like more content on it, right? That there wasn't even some of the stuff like I think there's a Wikipedia page on slow balls, and like some of these slow balls I'm not even sure really existed more than 2 or 3 times, or maybe one guy bowled them. Just very simple things of there are, maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to look at my blackboard here, but there's maybe 20, 25 different deliveries in cricket that are pretty standard. And as you said, are cross-pollinated and everything else. And then I thought, well, the World Cup's coming around. It'd be interesting to sort of look at how T20 cricket has co-opted some of the older deliveries as well. And, next thing you know, I was in front of a whiteboard and I was drawing in all different colors, and hopefully some of it made sense. I've got many balls, as Deepak said. I've got as many balls as possible. So you tell me where you want to start and I'll get the appropriate ball when we need it.
I think we can just follow the order that basically majority of the captains are going to follow during the World Cup. To just like to begin with, as we know, that
so part-time spinner.
Even that is all. I think that would be at the business end of the tournament, right? Because we're going to have belters of the pitches to begin with, so it'll be more of little bit of swing to begin with, I would say, because for the first couple of overs, it tends to swing in T20 cricket, and swing ballers have become a little relevant of late. We have seen Arshdeep do that. We have seen other of couple such ballers also. So maybe to begin with, we can just talk about swing, like how it actually works, what are different types of swing balls and everything, because you have plethora of that. You have so much data to talk about. And I was going through that video. I think it was like 8 minutes of video, but it was so dense that it took me 20 minutes to consume it because I was just pausing it, kind of grabbing the stuff, trying to like emulate all those things with the cricket ball. So very short.
I could have gone on forever. I'm shocked it was only 8 minutes, actually. It felt longer when I was making it as well. Probably because I had to find balls. At certain times, I was like, where are all my balls? And do I have the right balls available? And then I was like, I was trying to color code the board so it made a little bit more sense and everything. So I had like 3 balls in one hand. I had 4 pieces of chalk in the other, all trying to put it together. But yeah, so essentially, cricket and baseball come out of one sport, which is a sport called stool ball. Do you know anything about stool ball? Have we ever had this stool ball discussion?
To be honest, like I've heard this name for the first time.
So stool ball is a sport that was probably invented by milkmaids, right? And it was something that they would do at the end of their let's say shift. It was probably before we called them shifts, but at the end of their working days. And they would play this sport, which involved hitting a ball. Obviously, cricket and variations of cricket had existed before, or variations of baseball. I'm sure people had thrown balls at people and hit them, but it was a little bit more formalized. And this is around the sort of Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire type of area, right? And one of the things that they did was that they had the stools that they were using to milk the cows with, right? And if you look at a milking stool, Deepak, you will suddenly understand how we ended up with cricket stumps in the shape that we did, right? But the next thing that sort of happens is that obviously they don't always have the same conditions available to them, and there's 2 different versions. One, the stool is on the ground, and the other one, the stool is in a hedge. And when it's in a hedge, that becomes baseball, and when it's on the ground, that becomes cricket. And if you think about those two sports, that's essentially what happens. And so there is actually, I've got stool ball bats here, which are quite interesting. But essentially, a stool ball is almost identical to a baseball. I think they're a
But
little
then
different.
why
Sorry,
baseball kind of became mainstream in the US? I had no idea that it didn't originate from there. So like I just thought that it was their brainchild. So to
No,
be honest
so
with you,
baseball, there was also, I think there was a craze of baseball in Germany as well. So baseball briefly went to Germany. There's a great, I think there's about 2 great books. I've got one of them somewhere on the history of baseball because everyone thought it originated in the US. I think even the Baseball Hall of Fame used to say it was invented in the US. And then
Yeah,
they found
exactly.
out
This is
it
what I
actually had
also know.
started in southern England and was related directly to cricket. And so this game, stool ball, still exists in England, right? But it's only, I think there's a little bit in the Midlands and mostly, as I said, around that sort of Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire kind of area. I think those are the 3 sort of areas that it's still played in. And you get a baseball. I don't have one here, which is so annoying. I don't have a stool ball here, but it's very similar to a baseball, except for one difference. On the baseball, it's Grey Nichols. Because Grey Nichols make all the stool ball kit. So we know that Grey Nichols is probably the oldest sort of cricket manufacturer that still exists because they were literally involved with cricket before it started. The reason I'm telling you all this story is what's fascinating is that these sports do start to diverge quite quickly. So much so that one ball looks like this and one ball looks like this. And I think that's also fascinating that not only do you have the stool in the hedge or do you have it on the ground, but the balls actually come out differently because there must have been a reason why that happened. And I would say it has something to do with the fact that these balls needed to bounce. And so they had to make them differently. And these balls obviously don't bounce, right? And so
Yes,
something to do
exactly.
with that. But because a baseball is thrown in the air and doesn't bounce, you have to do something to the ball, right? You can't just throw it dead straight because if you throw it dead straight, over and over again, people are just going to clock you out the park. So baseball pitchers start doing all these weird and wacky things with their hands, right? To get the ball to curve and to swing and to drop and everything else. Bowlers don't have to do that because they're bowling on terrible wickets, right? That are not if you think we've seen some bad wickets in modern cricket, I can only imagine with a great batter in the 1830s was averaging about 15 to 20. Right, the pitches were that bad, so the bowlers didn't have to do anything. Whereas these poor baseball pitchers are having to do all these different things on the ball. And somewhere along the line, there's a guy called Fred Spofforth who was born in Yorkshire, but obviously goes on to play for Australia. I say obviously, like everyone knows who Fred Spofforth is, but he starts as an underarm bowler and then converts to overarm bowling, and he works out that you can actually get the ball to move in the air. The greatest story behind this, which I didn't put in the video, Deepak, but you're going to love this, is when he told people that he was doing this, even scientists, they said it's an optical illusion and that it isn't really happening and that he was wrong. And he's like, I'm pretty sure this ball's moving. I'm pretty sure I could see things going in either direction and everything else. And so he starts to study it. And one of the things he studies is the baseball pitches, right? And he's like, well, their ball is obviously moving. Why would their ball move and our ball wouldn't move, right? It doesn't make any sense. And so I think Fred Spofforth, even though we talk about him as the king of swing bowling, I think probably what he was doing was putting revolutions on the ball, but he was also playing with the seam. And there's a book you can read. He wrote like a book that's about 20 pages long on this, where he talks about studying baseball and contacting scientists. Like imagine a cricketer in the 1870s being that, like he must have been a genius, this dude, right? And so... Yeah, sorry, go.
Because to be honest, like what I thought for all these years, like swing came a lot later, like 1890s or something. Because I read this one crazy story of Australian team, or I was like visiting Philadelphia and then encountering swing for the first time.
Barton
I just
King.
thought
That's a guy called Barton King. No, that was in the 1900s. No, I would say that by that stage. No, certainly swing existed before then. So swing exists with Spofforth, and he talks about not just swinging the ball left and right, but swinging it up and down. So we now know that's how I assumed he's putting revs on the ball rather than just using the seam. But he does also
the
talk
backspin
about
and everything.
Yeah, but when I first read that, I was like, this guy's on drugs. Like that didn't make any sense. And then about 2 years after that, all the Hawkeye data came out, and I was like, oh, I see what he's saying here. right? And I understood exactly what he was talking about. So no, swing bowling definitely happens there, but seam bowling is still the dominant version because the pitches aren't very good until the mid 1890s. That's when the pitches start to get good, right? When agriculture catches up with professional cricket. And at that stage, just coming in and bowling and trying to hit the seam doesn't help you anymore, right? Because the wickets are getting good. That's when Hobbs comes out, right? Hobbs is the first modern batter. And so he's doing that on flat wickets. So at that
but
point,
if you have to compare like Bradman's era wicket with today, so how different would they be?
Bradman's wickets were softer, and the issue with Bradman's wickets quite often is that they were uncovered, so that when they got wet, they were unplayable on. But by the time Bradman comes along, there's certainly an element of the pitches being quite flat. So from 1890 till 1940 when he plays, so 1930 when he starts, I suppose, the wickets, people work out what needs to be done, right? It becomes a business. So you have to make better wickets. And that's why Jack Hobbs comes out of that era, right? Because he's the first guy that can make lots of runs. But the wickets that Spofford starts on weren't like that at all. So the other great bowlers, if you look at Spofford, his figures aren't anywhere near as good as the other great bowlers of his era. And that's because they were not trying to reinvent cricket. They were just trying to hit the pitch and let the pitch do everything, because there were literally little chunks of shit on the pitch to make the pitch grow, right? There was no, these pitches were not that good. So where everyone's banging the ball into the wicket, while the baseball pitches are doing all these different things to try and get the ball to go everywhere, and everyone else is banging it in, and Spofford's like, I think we can do something different here, right? And at that point, the vast majority of the people who were spinning the ball were doing it from an underarm position, not from an overarm position, right? And so I think he's doing all that. So the swing comes in, and then by the late 1890s to early 1900s, swing becomes really big. And you're right, when you talk about Barton King, the American, he's certainly a big part of that. He might have, we're not 100% sure because we know people could swing it both ways, but it is possible that he kind of shows people how to bowl the in-swinger consistently.
Yes.
But there's no doubt that people were bowling it beforehand, but it might have been people with kind of automatic actions, if you know what I mean, like those sort of Ishant
The
Sharma
biomechanical,
type,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
Shikha Pandey type actions, Anya Shrubsole, where they just swing it in. Whereas I think what Barton King was able to do was more like what Fred Spofford did, which was if he wants the ball to go that way, it goes that way. If he wants the ball to go that way, it goes that way. But essentially, the main difference is, for anyone watching, is that there is a fin on the ball, of course. And once we start using the fin, not just to hit it, but to also canter it in whichever direction that we want to swing it, that is essentially when people understand what swing bowling is. And it's also why if you go back in Crick Info, you'll see leg spinner, off spinner, quick bowler, whatever. Quite often those bowlers were not what we would consider a quick bowler or a leg spinner. They're usually hybrids, right? Sidney Barnes has said, I was a spinner, and everyone else says he's a quick bowler. And so they were doing multiple things with the ball at that stage. So you don't get many people who just run in and do one particular thing. Did that answer your question on swing?
Yeah. Because to be honest, like Sidney Barnes is a very good case study in itself, because I've heard this story because he himself was always of this opinion that he's just spinning the ball, but others had different opinions of him. And kind of one first bowler of that era who still catches everyone's imagination in terms of what he brought to the game in itself. And obviously, like, just imagine if in today's era also you're comparing his numbers with Bumrahs of the world, with Rabadas of the world, then that means something. Like, he's still relevant even after 100 years, more than 100 years of cricket.
And he also, I think we didn't really have a term for what he did, but he was probably a mixture bowler, right? In that he did bowl spin deliveries, and he also bowled seam up. Like, there's great stories of him. I can't remember if it was Aubrey Faulkner or Victor Trumper, but getting them with a Yorker, right? Well, spinners don't really get wickets with Yorkers, right? And he could bowl a bouncer too. So clearly he was more than that. So I actually think if you want a modern version of Sidney Barnes, it's probably what peak Mustafizur Rahman was, right? Where you have seam bowling skills and you have spin bowling skills. And Bumrah is also a version of that in some ways as well. But Mustafizur even more so, right, with the wrist. There's also, have you ever looked up a guy called Bob Appleyard, by the way?
No.
One day you're going to have to look up Bob Appleyard. He is he was another absolute freak, but his body kept falling apart. So he'd take wickets at like 12 one year in county cricket, and then he'd be like, the next year he'd have like pneumonia or something, and he wouldn't play. Then the next year he'd come back and he'd take his wickets at like 14, and then his shoulder would basically fall off, and it was just like he played a little bit for England as well. So we have a couple of outliers, but generally there aren't that many Sydney Barnes or Bob Appleyard type cricketers. Generally, it's a bit of a slow evolution. So every now and again, a new delivery comes in, and that sort of takes over or becomes really important. So it was seam bowling, or it was underarm bowling, then it was overarm bowling, then it was seam bowling, then it was swing bowling. That was the sort of natural evolution of those things. Outswing, then in swing.
And I think even with swing bowling, like the use of seam and the use of backspin, all those things, that also had an evolution. That, like, to be honest, when I saw this video of yours, this was the first time I've got to know that the backspin came a lot earlier than the use of seam for the swing. Because I was always of the opinion that the seam positioning was a more organic stuff as far as swing is concerned, and the backspin and all those things came a lot later. But that rationale that you were able to draw with the baseball makes a lot of sense now. And considering the fact that both the sports originated from almost the same place, adds up to that even more. So this is because I had no clue on that, because I always used to think that baseball is a more American sports. It's been their invention, like similar to what basketball has been. And don't surprise me now by saying that even basketball didn't originate from Europe, from the US.
Basketball was invented by apple pickers in Ireland. No, basketball is from America. But yeah, so the reason that baseball takes off is largely to do with the Civil War, isn't it? Because there were no cricket pitches. So when they stopped to play cricket, there was no way for them to be able to play cricket. And there was another sport that they also played. So I think rounders, cricket, and baseball are all related to stool ball, and probably just go off in slightly different tangents, when it comes to the way that they are played. But they're all very fascinating. So basically, seam bowling is very, very normal at that stage. But at that same point, let's do it chronologically as much as we can now. So the next big change is, of course, we start to have spin bowlers, as we talked about before. But a lot of those spin bowlers are bowling underarm at that point. And then they take to overarm. And it makes sense because if you think about it, again, if people are starting to experiment with what the ball can do, spin bowling is essentially, without getting too fancy, just opening a doorknob, right? And so some bowlers were going in and opening the doorknob. And then a guy called Bernard Bosanquet or Bosanquet? I think it's Bosanquet. Anyway, I always mispronounce his name. And then his nephew, or his great nephew, was like a famous newsreader, and everyone always corrects me, but I can't remember which one is correct. But anyway, Bernard, a rich dude, he used to play a game where him and his friends used to try and spin balls at each other and try and make sure that the other person would catch it. Any kid in the world's done this. I've done this with my friends. I'm sure you've done it with your friends as well, right?
Exactly. I do it with my kids also.
Exactly. And so one of the things he works out is he bowled a little bit of leg spin. He worked out that if you bowl the leg spinner but you keep going, it goes the other direction, right? But the funny thing about Bernard Bosanquet is he never takes this delivery all that seriously. He's just like, it's a party trick. He plays a little bit for England, but he basically plays as a batter who bowls it occasionally. I think the first time he bowled it in a game, Deepak, it bounces twice, right? Like, it's a really, really poor delivery. It bounces like a couple of times on the way through. But he then teaches it to Reggie Swartz, who was his teammate, I think, at Middlesex. Reggie Swartz takes it back to South Africa and teaches 4 guys how to do it. And South Africa win their first ever test series on the back of the wrong one, right? And so that ball...
that was that was before the World War I, right?
Yeah, 05, 06, I think it's that summer, isn't it?
06,
yeah.
Because I saw one video of yours.
I don't think they'd ever won a test before then either.
Yes.
So they won a whole
even
series.
That was a pretty close match, I guess, right?
The first game comes down to, they win it 9 wickets down, but they win the series really easy. It wasn't a great English side, but they did destroy them. But what happens there is, for the next 20 years, everyone bowls the wrong one. And it becomes to the case where Bernard Bosanquet has to go and defend his delivery. And even he was at the end going, mate, if it's going to ruin cricket, I'd probably rather people didn't bowl. I don't even know how you would have banned it, right? I don't even know what regulation. Please make sure your wrist is facing the batter when you bowl. I don't know what they would have come up with. But what's fascinating there again is that ball eventually people get used to it until what happens, Deepak? We get to T20 cricket. And suddenly, that's the biggest weapon in the world again, right? Like it's
Exactly.
fascinating how this can, if in the 1960s a wrong-un was a good delivery to have, but it wasn't like you could be a really good leg spinner without a wrong-un as well. Whereas now, test leg spin almost doesn't exist anymore, and wrong-uns are so important.
In fact, like people like Bishnoi, they have built their entire career on wrong-uns.
Rehan
So the
Ahmed,
stock
right?
ball is Rehan Ahmed. The stock ball is wrong-un. So like the traditional ones come out pretty rarely. It's almost a surprise. And even one thing, like now people have experimented so much with the wrong-un also, the wrist wrong-un, the finger wrong-un, the flick wrong-un, all those
Yeah.
things have come up. And even the wrong-un itself has evolved so much, and there's so much been added. Those so many different layers of I think evolution added in wrong-un itself that we can actually do a complete I would say show on that itself. Like
I
because so
didn't
much
get
happened
into
in
it.
that.
Yeah, I didn't get into it because I was running out of space on the blackboard. But you're right. So we have the sort of normal conventional wrong-un. We then have all these different variations where you basically the problem with the wrong-un is it comes out slower. And it comes out slower because it has to roll up your fingers and then out, right? And so what people have worked out, and was it you? No, it was Usman Tariq. Someone put a clip up of him online the other day showing his wrong-un.
The finger wrong-un also.
And you can see the ball the whole way. And it doesn't make it harder. It doesn't always make it harder to pick, but it makes it faster. And a lot of batters won't pick the wrong-un by the wrist position. They'll pick it by the pace because it comes out so much slower and it usually goes up more, whereas the finger wrong-un doesn't. But there's all sorts of variations that Imran Tahir and Rashid Khan, and this also comes out of Afridi, Kumble, and Abdul Qadir and Mushtaq Ahmed. So it's probably like 6 or 7 generations, but the whole idea is how do I get the ball to spin in the opposite direction in a way that the batter can't pick it without losing any pace? That's the modern wrong-un. Whereas if I bowled you a wrong-un, Deepak, you would probably be able to tell it's slower. You'd be able to tell it's slower and then probably guess that it's a wrong-un straight away. In fact, I played a kid in a club game and I was telling him that. I said, you've either got to make your arm go quicker or you've got to look up one of these other wrong-uns because I can't pick it out the hand. It all looks like cheese to me. I have no idea what you're bowling, but the minute it's slower, I just wait, right?
I have a beautiful wrong-un story associated with you. So when we did first video in May, I had recorded this video of my son bowling his Chinaman. So he was bowling.
We don't use that phrase anymore, but left arm wrist spinners.
Left arm wrist spinner. So he was bowling his wrong-un was his stock ball. So he was bowling it, and I was not able to pick it from the hand. And then I showed the video to you, and you had given certain tips on like the use of hip, the non-bowling arm, and everything. So what happened after that? His stock delivery, the Chinaman, or I would say the traditional
Wrist spinner.
wrist spin delivery became a lot better. But I have started picking his wrong-uns now because it has become more conventional. Earlier, I don't know whether he was just releasing from the side of his palm or what. Like, I don't know because he was not able to complete his action that well. So the variation was coming out naturally and was harder to pick. But now he's become more traditional. So his wrong-un, again, the pace, it doesn't lose that much pace, but it has become easier to pick now. So I don't know why it has happened. So
No. So what's happening is what I was trying to do is get him into a better position so he can bowl his wrist spinner with more drop and more spin. He doesn't need to worry about it. How old? He's like 10, isn't he? 9?
he's 9.
Yeah, he doesn't need to worry about a wrong-un until he's 12 or 13. In fact, I would almost encourage. So many kids want to bowl them, and they'll always ask me at the nets, and I was like, when you perfect your wrist spinner, I will teach you how to bowl the wrong-un because it can actually confuse your action if you start to bowl too many wrong-uns, right? And then
That's what was the
it also ruins
That was
your
the
shoulder.
problem with him, na? That's what he pointed out in that video.
So it's fascinating, the whole thing, but the history of them and how much more, and also it's actually, if you can bowl a wrist spin, I can teach you how to bowl a wrong-un, right? Like in about 30 seconds, I can teach you how to bowl a wrong-un. And yet, for 20 years, and that's part of the reason it took over, but for 20 years, batters couldn't work out what they were doing. And that is a huge advantage. And we'll also come back to that later. All right, what do you want to get to next?
Yeah, again, since we're talking about spin only and we're talking about wrong-un, why don't we just talk about Doosra also in the same breath? Because I kind of got surprised, and I've even posted that question on the group also. You said it's just not possible to bowl Doosra with a legit action. So I just wanted to know, like the person who have made it mainstream, Sakleen Mushtaq. So did he actually have a proper action of Doosra, or was it like with him also there was an issue as far as
I,
the legitimacy of the action is concerned?
I don't
Because I always
know.
had this impression that he used to do it pretty fairly. Like he never had a I was with the bend in his arm while bowling a
He
Doosra.
definitely had a bend in his arm when he bowled it. If you go back and have a look,
Oh.
whether he had a straightening of his arm is something different. This is the thing with this Usman Tariq stuff in Pakistan at the moment. Everyone's like, look how bent his arm is. So it doesn't matter if his arm's bent, guys. I can't straighten my arm after my accident. I can't throw a ball because I can't straighten my arm, right? Like this is as straight and as bent as it will go. So I think with him, I think it was certainly a lot better than other people's actions. Without going through the biomechanics, we're just guessing whether he threw it. I think he was less likely to throw it than a lot of the other bowlers who were bowling it at that time. But Deepak, how many people are bowling it in modern cricket? The Doosra?
I don't think so. Because now they've switched to the carrom ball. I seriously, I have not seen anybody bowl
Right.
Doosra in
So
last
doesn't
10
that
years, I
tell
guess.
you that it's probably not legal? It's either almost impossible to bowl or it's not legal. That would be those are my only two guesses, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. Because, like, I always thought that just Sakleen is still just an outlier. Because, again, I have not watched his Doosra videos now. And when I used to see that 25 years back, then I don't think so. I was even equipped enough to maybe point out the differences in the biomechanics involved. So maybe I would have to, ideally, I should revisit it and should try to like find cues if I could actually. But like from the plain viewing and from the plain memory, muscle memory I have, I always used to think that it's pretty legit that what he used to do. So that's why I was pretty surprised. And again, and even with Murli, so what do you think? Because we were having this discussion today also, and you said you don't even consider him as a finger spinner, he's a wrist spinner. So is it like he's bowling his Doosra as a leg spinner only?
yeah, so I think his Doosra was probably closer to a wrong-un, if that makes sense. The issue with him is that because he's bowling wrist spin with a bent arm, there was always going to be a little bit of straightening, and he has such a bent arm, and also he has the overextended arm, so he's also going in the other direction, a bit like what Bumrah and Jofra and a lot of bowlers we now know have, but we didn't know that at the time. So like, if you hold a tennis ball and you can do that, you can bowl a
Yes, I've tried
beautiful
that.
wrong-un, right? And so I think his natural delivery was that, right, which is just a wrong-un. And then maybe what he was doing then when he was bowling the Doosra was not the same kind of Doosra that everyone else was. I think it was maybe more like a leg spinner that went in the
And
other
that's
direction.
what I was asking, because I always used to think that his off spinner is the wrong one. Because
Yeah,
I've heard
that's
this
how I would do
story
it.
where like when Alan Border played him for the first time, he said like he said like I'm not able to pick this leggy.
Yep.
So
He
and
played and missed the whole over and went down to Ian Healy and said, I can't hit this leggy. And Ian Healy went, I think he's an offie skip. So I think that tells you that. And I've talked to other players who played him who, like, they actually started to play him like a wrong-un bowler because also he got more dip than finger spinners usually do, which finger spinners usually put revolutions on the side of the ball.
exactly.
Right? And he actually had it more like a wrist spinner that came over. So I think he was more like that. Do you want to hear the true story of the Doosra, which I didn't put in my video, but it is absolutely hilarious? That
Why
Sakleen
not?
Mushtaq was not the first person to come up with this ball.
So who was he?
So there was a Victorian cricketer who toured with Australia. I must have toured in the 60s I think it was in the 60s, late 60s. And his name was Jack Potter. He went on to coach Oxford for years. So he's coached lots of professional cricketers and a very famous cricket coach within the Oxford area, but not particularly famous as a cricketer, right? But he was a batter who played for Victoria, who would come in the nets and bowl the Doosra. And Richie Benaud would sit in there going, what are you doing batting? You have this delivery that no one's ever had before. You should, and Jack Potter would be like, it's just a bit of fun. And Richie Benaud's like, it's not a bit of fun. This is incredible. Like, I've never seen anyone be able to do this before. And of course, this is around the period where Australia have two other mystery spinners not long after that as well, where they're carrom ball bowlers, again, like 40 years before the carrom ball becomes a thing. And so Jack Potter just never does it. And I talked to guys that he coached, and they said he could still do it like in his 60s. Come in and bowl the Doosra, right? And he never, I'm not even sure, it's so bad that I'm not even sure he has like professional wickets with it. It was almost entirely in the nets.
But like,
And
how could you just not make a career out of it?
31 wickets. He took 31 professional wickets in his life. He
But like,
just,
how is it even possible that you didn't
but
even think of
Bosanquet was
making
the
a career?
same, right? Bosanquet never took the wrong end seriously either, really. He bowled it a little
But like,
bit.
that's like like it's a 50-year time leap between the both, right?
Yeah, but I still
And
think there's an element of like, both of them were batters and they probably didn't take their bowling all that seriously and they just
but
didn't
like,
think about
is
it.
it Jarrod also the reason? Even today, apart from that one insane series which Ajanta Mendes had, still the notion is that mystery spinners might not survive the Test cricket. So because the batters have so much time, they can pretty much sit on the back foot, because they don't have to basically get hurried into the shots because of the nature of the game.
Do you
So
want
is
to
it
want me?
like,
Do you want me to give you my theory on this?
yeah, why not? That's the
Most
reason
mystery
I've come
spinners
up with
don't
this
have a
question.
good. Yeah, most mystery spinners don't have a good stock ball.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that
Pretty
they're
much.
not good at what they do. It's if you look at Mendes's, his stock ball was a flat ball that barely spun back. Right.
Exactly.
If you go back and you look at Iverson and those guys, I think Iverson was the only mystery spinner. So he was the one that came after Potter or around that period of Potter, who maybe was because he was so big and strong. Maybe he had a little bit more rotation on the ball than what the modern carrom ball bowlers had, but probably not. And so it's not that mystery spinners are terrible by nature. It's that there was no real mystery to what Shane Warne did for the last 8 years of his career. He put lots of revolutions on the ball, and then occasionally he put slightly less revolutions on the ball, and it either spun a lot or it went dead straight. Right?
Exactly.
That's not a mystery spinner, but why is that great? Right? Why is Anil Kumble's stock delivery so dangerous? Why is Murali's one or Rangana Haraf's? It's because of the work that they're putting on the ball. It's because it's always a danger. Nathan Lyon, his stock ball is a very ordinary off spin delivery, but it's dropping, and it's biting, and it's bouncing. Right?
Yeah,
So
because
every time you play,
because of like the action, I would say, because it's more
yeah,
side
yeah.
on, so he gets a lot of drop on the ball and the seam position and everything.
Whereas
So
when he was in Test cricket, Jack Leach didn't have a very strong stock ball, right? He was fine when the wicket was in his favour, but on a flat wicket, he's not putting any pressure on you. Whereas Ashwin had the ability to put pressure on you, even on the flattest of wickets.
and this is where I think Ashwin's 2025 IPL also suffered, because I saw him bowling carrom ball more regularly to the right-handers. Like the time he would see right-handers, he would just straight away start bowling the carrom ball in 25 IPL. Because I clearly remember in one of
He
the
bowled leg
matches
spin one
against,
year, dude. There was one year where he
yeah,
started bowling leg spin,
but I'm
right?
just talking about this particular current
Yeah.
season. It's like in 25, I think Will Jacks was the one who got out on carrom ball in the first match, Mumbai versus CSK, and after that, I just saw him bowling carrom ball all the time to the right-handers. Because again, point, because even a legend like him kind of digressed from his traditional off spin and his top ball, and then the fun, or I would say the bite, or I would say the X factor just went away, and that's why he didn't have the kind of season everybody expected him to.
Honestly, I would say that's one of the reasons that Sunil Narayan didn't go on to have a great sort of ODI one day career, the way he could, sorry, a test career, I should say, at times, was because his best ball was an incredible. People don't remember this because he almost never bowls it anymore. But his best ball when he first started was the off spinner. It would curve away and it would spit back at pace, right? A little bit like what Syed Ajmal was doing, right? And he's probably a little bit taller, maybe a little bit more upright. So it had the bounce and everything. And then he started inventing all these other deliveries, and he almost didn't have that great off spinner available to him anymore, which meant that he was, it was a completely different situation. So I think that you need that great stock ball, whereas in T20 cricket, clearly you need something slightly different. And maybe that's what Ashwin was looking for. So yeah, I think with mystery spinners in general, and generally when we say mystery spinner anyway, it's like everyone's doing one of two things, right? They're either spinning it that way or that way. And very occasionally they're spinning it both ways. When we say mystery spin, it's just because we came up with these two terms, off spin and leg spin, and nothing else really fits into them, right?
Exactly.
And so realistically, Varun Chakravarti has the ability to bowl wrist spin deliveries and finger spin deliveries, right? And so that to us is more of a mystery spinner, whereas actually it's not. He's just moving between different kinds of deliveries. And so I think that's part of the issue. But to get back to the Doosra, I do think the Doosra was basically impossible to bowl legally. I also think that once everyone got tested and got banned for it, everyone got very, very nervous. And the carrom ball, you do not need to bend your arm to be able to bowl it, right? And so I do think it's much easier from that perspective to bowl.
I agree.
Can you bowl a carrom ball?
I never tried it, to be honest. Like, I have a very different story, as I've shared it multiple times. I started as a Chinaman bowler, the wrist spinner. Then, during my under 16 days, you remember this Indian cricketer, Ratinder Sodhi, who was the part of under 19 squad also?
No, I don't remember.
Ratinder Sodhi, who was the part of that under 19 team which won the World Cup. Yuvraj,
Okay, yeah.
Mohammad Kaif. So if you have seen that Dhoni movie, he was the one who caught Dhoni in that match against Yuvraj, where Yuvraj ended up scoring 358. So his father was the coach of under 16 team at Patiala at that time. So he saw me bowl the Chinaman and he just walked away like that. And I was bowling to the under 23 electricity board team. So it was a professional team. So they used to love that because I used to get a lot of spin. And the captain of the team just ran to the coach, and then he came running to me because just to see that I don't want this guy to get demoralized. Like, the coach didn't even have a look. He just started walking, and he said, like, look, Deepak, you have a unique skill that you are a left armer, and there's hardly anybody in this entire club. There was hardly two, I guess, in the entire like in all the age groups combined. So your stock ball should move away from the righty. Yeah. So from all my life bowling Chinaman, in my 9th or 10th standard, when I was like 13 or 14, I guess, 13 something, I started bowling the wrist spin, the finger spin,
Spin, yeah.
Just very recently, I think like 5 years back, I got to know that the grip is very different. Like the finger spinner grip is like you have to have all these three fingers together and it should be like this. And for the wrist spin, you can have more liberty with your fingers. So all this while, I used to bowl finger spin with this kind of
with a wrist spin grip.
With the wrist spin grip. So I didn't even know. So due to that, my stock ball used to come from an angle. It always used to come into the batters. So like when I gave this under 16 trials, I think I had like 6 wickets in 4 overs or something, because even I didn't know like what exactly is coming out of my hands. So how can you even expect a 16-year-old kid to understand like what this bowler is bowling? So everybody was like playing for the ball going away and they were getting bowled or LBW. So this is how that was the last bit of professional cricket I played. But I became a finger spinner from wrist spinner who never used to take the ball away from the righties.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how it worked.
So basically, he tried to fix you to take the ball away from the righties, and you managed to still not take the ball away from the righties. Exactly. So he might have been the worst coach in professional cricket, that he managed to actually... He turned a wrist spinner into a finger spinner and still managed to make him shitter.
But to be honest, I was getting more wickets because batters were all confused. Because the action looked like...
You might have also done that bowling the wrist spin to them, to be fair. So the carrom ball comes around from that same period as the Doosra, right? And I think it's because a lot of people couldn't bowl the Doosra. My understanding is that Harath is the first guy that kind of starts playing with it, right? And flicking the ball forward. But if you look at my logo of Good Areas, this is actually Iverson, who I mentioned before, who does the same thing. So we know it had been around in cricket. And then it disappeared and then comes back again. But essentially, you're just flicking the ball out and you're putting a little bit of revolution on it. And the issue is, to get back to the conversation and why we were mentioning that before, is I think if you hold it with both fingers like you do, it goes straight. You want to hold it with one, don't you? So it spins in that direction. But yeah, same sort of thing. The issue is you can never put enough revolutions on the ball, and you also need a wicket that has some spin in it, because you're putting so few revolutions on it if you don't do that. So it doesn't drop, it doesn't bounce, it doesn't kick, it doesn't do anything like that, it doesn't drift. So you really have to do that. I think in the future we'll see more of those. But what's fascinating about this delivery is we are still talking about a delivery that happens 100 years after the leg spin version. So leg spinners had been able to spin the ball in both directions for 100 years ahead of finger spinners. And now finger spinners suddenly had one and then two options to be able to take it the other way. And I think that's quite a fascinating development that it took that long. And then I think that, and along with the fact that finger spin makes more sense for LBWs and the DRS era, you know, you're not getting as much bounce, and you're you know, the angles that you can bowl to certain players, I think makes a lot more sense that finger spin has taken over in most cricket, except for probably T20, and that's because you still want to be able to spin the ball both directions when people are trying to sack you out the park.
Pretty interesting. And also, I think for offies and for the carrom ball, you need to have, I think, bigger hands also. So I was never blessed with that. So never even tried
Only your
that. I
fingers.
think.
Okay, yeah. So I'm about the same. I don't really have very long fingers. So if you meet Monty Panesar or Ashley Giles and you shake their hands, right, your hand just disappears. You realize just how big these, and not everyone's like that. Some guys have long fingers rather than big hands, and it's one of the reasons too that, like, people will see someone play really good in women's cricket and be like, well, look, Sophie Eccleston's bowling at like 85 kilometers an hour, right? And she's spinning the ball. We should get her into men's cricket. And it's like, yeah, but the reason she's able to do that is the ball is so much smaller.
Yes.
It would be very hard for her to bowl at the same speed with the same amount of pace with the bigger ball. And so again, it's, you know, Sophie Eccleston probably had, I don't think I've ever met Sophie, but I'm assuming she has bigger hands, right? And so she can get that ball to spin. So that is another big part of it. And then, of course, and we'll do this as a podcast another day, but the whole calluses thing. So you need to actually, eventually you open up a callus on your finger because you're spinning it so much off that finger. And then, Deepak, and I'm not going to give you any more information because we could do another whole podcast about this. Then finger spinners believe that if you piss on that finger, it will harden the calluses up, which will allow you to spin the ball further. And I have done the scientific studies. It is not correct. And I don't mean I pissed on my finger. I mean, I've checked with experts.
You never know.
I've
you
checked
never know,
with
Jarrod.
Well, to be honest, when I bowl, I bowl finger spin the way that, oh God, what's his name? Funky Miller. Do you remember Colin Funky Miller? I bowl finger spin the way that he does, which is I basically hold it like a baseball pitcher and do it that way. So my balls don't drop very much, but I can still get the sideways spin, and I can also dart them through a little bit more. But if I'm playing anyone who's actually good against spin, they'll absolutely whack me. And also, I personally, and this is not having a go at you, but I personally think that if you choose finger spin over wrist spin, there's something wrong with you as a human.
And this is, to be honest, like, I was not even aware of it. And you know what? My cricketing journey has been pretty messy. So I got selected for state level because of these trials. And then my dad, who knew the officials in Punjab cricket at that time. So there was a guy called RP Pandav. So he went on to even become a pretty big shot in PCA or even in BCCI. So he was my dad's friend. He called him up to say that, kind of kick my kid out of the club so that he can focus on his studies. So I'd
like to think that you were shit anyway, and it was going to happen. No. And this is the story that your dad told you.
I could have at least played that match because I did well in the trials. So like I was supposed, and left armers was a novelty, right, at that level, because there was hardly anybody. So I kind of got kicked because my dad was like pretty clear on that he needs to focus on his studies. And for good 6 months, I didn't talk to anyone. I was like, done. So I'm not going to do anything now. So it was like that. I went the other way around. But then obviously he was able to spin the story. And he was able to sell me
he was so
down
able
the river.
To spin the story. Unlike you, who bowled absolute nude nuts and thinks he was going to play for India.
No. I was not even, like, at least I wanted to have some professional career, right? Like, thinking about India was way beyond the reach of
I'm joking.
Kids big that at that time. Like,
I've seen the size of your hands. You weren't playing for India.
Yeah, no way. So like at that time, he kind of convinced me about Anil Kumble being an engineer. So this is how the entire thing happened for me.
One day you could meet Anil Kumble and tell him how he ruined your life.
No, I don't think so. Like I'm no happy because I know for a reason now that I would have completely ruined my life if I would have even thought of doing something professionally in cricket. Like what we're doing with Combox now makes a lot more sense, and my engineering has a lot to do with that now. So I would say, like, if I see at the entire complete picture, it has just I think the jigsaw puzzle has kind of solved itself for me. So like it has become a better opportunity for me now, just because of the experiences I had for all these years.
So we're talking about wrist spin. We're talking about finger spin. I want to just talk about the flipper. Do you know what a flipper actually is?
Yes.
Okay, show me. Bowl one.
I just know you have to basically, not with the grip, because you have to basically skid the ball, and so basically it's like you're just kind of shooting the ball so that it skids, and
You're holding the ball in your
yeah.
fingers, and then you're
Yes.
clicking your fingers. So if
Yes.
you,
And
anyone
that
at
too
home
with the
can play along.
yes, and that too after completing the action, which is very tough.
Oh,
Like,
it's almost impossible. And to get back to the Doosra conversation, this is where I'm not sure in which way. That's why I hedged it before, because people will say, "Oh, maybe there was only one guy who could bowl the Doosra legally in Suckler and Mushra." And your first thought is, "Oh, is that right?" But then you have a look. There's only been a history of guys who can bowl the flipper, like a handful of guys who can bowl the flipper at pace regularly in a game. In the history of the game, like it's just
like
there haven't been that many.
the best years of Shane Warne that I have seen, I don't think so. I've seen him bowl a flipper, to be honest.
That's what I mean. Even he probably bowls a flipper up until he does his shoulder, is my guess. So maybe 98.
Because in 2005 Ashes, as far as I
it's
remember,
gone.
he didn't bowl up.
He was
He didn't
completely
bowl
gone.
a-
He
yeah,
didn't
because
really bowl after 98. He hasn't really bowled a flipper all the wrong anymore, right?
even in 98 series also, when he came to India, the couple of flippers he was trying to bowl, and Sachin, it didn't land that well, and Sachin kind of whacked him all over the place.
Yeah.
I remember that even in Chennai he was trying to land it, but it kind of just sat into the pitch, and then Sachin was able to clobber him.
But basically, the flipper, as you said before, it comes out quicker because you're snapping the fingers. And when you snap the fingers, it then has the backspin on it. So I actually think that it probably doesn't skid as much as we think. What it actually does is, because it lands, maybe because it's got so much backspin on it, because you, as I said, you're literally clicking your fingers with a cricket ball in it. To be able to do that and control it is a magical skill. But it has so much backspin on it that it actually probably lands a meter or two fuller than a normal ball.
Yes.
So you feel like it's skidding on, whereas it's probably not. It's just that suddenly you're thinking it's going to land, at the 4 meter mark, and it's now landing at the 2 meter mark, right? And it is a little bit quicker as well, but it is very easy to pick because almost lost it because it doesn't look like a leg spinner.
And I have
your wrist doesn't go in the same direction.
From memory, I have this particular dismissal of Cullinan, I guess, in Australia against Shane Warne, where he got bowled off this kind of a flipper, and he was wrong-footed for that ball because he didn't judge the length of the ball correctly. I think he was able to whack him for a couple of boundaries in that innings.
I think the Richie Richardson one as well at the MCG, which was maybe the first one that he successfully used in Test cricket, where Richie Richardson
even that one.
I'm pretty sure Richie Richardson thinks it's going to be a short ball, right?
Short
and he gets
ball.
back, and
He was
suddenly
also
he's like,
wrong-footed.
"How is this there?" And he's looking at the pitch. I think he thinks it was the pitch. I think he thought it kept low, and obviously now we know it didn't. Well, it did keep low, but that wasn't why it kept low. So I think it's a fascinating delivery. I wonder if of all the deliveries in Test cricket, or in top level cricket, if this is the most mentioned delivery compared to how little it is bowled. It is the highest ratio of being mentioned and the lowest ratio of being bowled. And you'll even hear now people will say, "Oh, this leg spinner's got a flipper." Like, do they have a flipper, or have they once bowled one in the nets? It's very rare. I can't remember ever watching an IPL game and seeing like more than one flipper a season, right? Like, it is not a ball that you see all that much.
And have you played? Have you played that game, EA Sports 2007?
Yeah, when you could just bowl them all the time.
Yes, this was the hack in that game.
Yeah.
On a damp surface, if you would bowl a flipper, it would just shoot through. And you would get LBWs.
It was also when those games came out and suddenly you could bowl the Doosra, and it's like, well, why does it matter if I'm picking a leg spinner or an off spinner anymore? They're basically the same. They can both spin it in both directions now. And it's like, if everyone could do this, I would understand. So I've always been quite fascinated with the flipper because of that. I can bowl one off, well, I could before my shoulder went. I could bowl one off about 16 to 18 yards, and I could get it to skid a little bit. And so I understand it. But the idea of running in and bowling it off my full run up and getting it to the other end, I think maybe once in my life I ever managed that in the nets. And even then, maybe it got an inside edge onto the pad. I don't even think I burst through anyone. So it is a delivery that we talk about a lot, but it's not a delivery that we see a lot. Do you want another one of those?
Why not?
Leg cutter. This is a pet
I
peeve
have
of mine.
amazing memories of it because of Venkatesh Prasad.
Yep. Okay.
And
But Venkatesh Prasad played in the 90s, dude.
yes.
Who's
So,
the best? And since then, who's bowled leg cutters?
I saw one with
Also, he's like
Lauren
the only
Bell.
guy in the 90s bowling them regularly as well.
But Lauren Bell was also bowling that back of the hand balls, which she
Nah,
was
so
bowling.
that's different. So I'll explain what I mean. So firstly, here's the big issue I have in cricket. Bowlers bowl the ball and it hits the seam and it goes that way and they go off cutter. And it goes that way and they go leg cutter. Those are not off cutters and leg cutters. Those are seaming deliveries, right?
Exactly.
An off cutter means that you're actually putting some sort of action on the ball to make sure that it comes back in. And a leg cutter exactly the same. So you don't see anyone bowl that ball for ages until a couple of years ago when bowlers realized with the leg cutter specifically that if you because the off cutter was so important for slow balls by that point, even though it's not quite the same kind of off cutter, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But the leg cutter became quite important as a slower ball because it goes away from right-handers. The issue is that, and this Venki was a genius at it, but it's really hard to do it at any kind of normal pace, right? And actually land it and get it to move away is so hard that generally people don't even try it. But it is an occasional slow ball now. But more often than not, when the ball jags away off the pitch, someone will say that's a leg cutter. That is not a leg cutter. The ball just hit.
I think like first time when I saw him bowl leg cutter, was it against Australia in Wankhede? That World Cup match of '96 where he was able to get like 3 or 4 wickets in the final over,
Are
including
you asking
the
me the
runouts.
first time that you saw it? Are you asking
No,
me to
I'm
search
just
your
like,
memories?
so like not my memory. Like he used it against Australia in that World Cup match, right? In which
think
like
so.
Sachin got out of a 91 because in last over Australia lost good 3 or 4 wickets in that match if I remember correctly. A couple of them were runouts and they were not able to pick him at all. So that was like the first visual memory I have of him. And then I saw him even do that in Durban in '96 where he took that 10-wicket haul where India got bashed. 100 all out and the 66 all out. Even in that also, on that Durban wicket, he was getting the leg cutter to work in a test match. So I don't know. Like I don't think so. In any recent memory, I've seen anybody do that. So why Lauren Bell one is so different? Was it not a leg cutter?
Well, she's bowling more of a leg spinner, isn't she? The ball that she's bowling, right? Because she's bringing her hand all the way around, isn't she? She's not just rolling her fingers across the back and the side. She's actually coming around, isn't she, when she bowls hers? So this brings us to the other delivery, which and since we're talking about leg spin, they're all kind of connected to each other, which is one of the points we're trying to make, that all these balls are very much interchangeable. What actually happens is that Simon O'Donnell, sorry, pardon me, Simon O'Donnell starts to bowl what is a bit of a leg spinner when he's bowling seam up. And when he bowls the leg spinner, he realizes the ball goes up and it drops and that no one can play it. And then what we think has happened, and Steve Waugh talked about this recently, but I'd love to get the two of them in a room so they can both discuss it. What we think has happened is Steve Waugh saw that ball and tried to bowl it the same, but he bowls it as a wrong un. So if you actually look, most back of the hand slow balls are wrong uns, but instead of having any sideways spin, it's almost all completely out of the top of the hand, which is why they go up and down so violently, the back of the hand slow balls. I would say backhand slow ball probably has the most revolutions on any cricket ball that is bowled. If you see someone like Tamal Mills bowl a back of the hand slow ball, I mean, I would love to get Tamal in because 150 kilometers an hour back
and that got him the IPL contract that year.
Yeah. Well, he was. I looked
2017.
into it. He was dropping like 50 kilometers, right? And that was his arm speed wasn't changing. It was all the rotations he was putting on the ball, right? And there would be other guys as well that that would be really, really high as well. So I think that back of the hand slow ball is like a bastardized leggy / wrong, however, whichever direction that you want to look at it. And I'm sure some people bowl it more as a leg spinner and some people bowl it more as a wrong. But over the years, it's become more of a general, you flick the back of the hand and then you get this incredible revolutions on the ball. And when you face it, one of the reasons it's so hard to face is it goes up above your eye line and your first thought is the ball's coming at your head.
Yes.
And then it drops well before you. So it's a really, really tricky delivery and it's fascinating. And that, of course, is the second slow ball. What was the first slow ball that was invented?
I think it was. I shared that reel also with you in the group.
There's people on the there are other people watching us, Deepak. It's not just you and I
because
here.
I just want you to explain that. That's the reason I'm not.
No. Well, you explain it and then I'll react to it.
So, like, as I was mentioning that I was kind of going through this apartheid history also of West Indies cricket and South African cricket. So I got to know about this pacer from Barbados, Stevenson, like how he was banned, even though he was tier-away fast bowler. And then he played most of his cricket in county cricket only. And since they used to bowl a lot of long spells in county, and that's the reason he kind of started bowling those
I think
slower ones.
It might have even been league cricket that year. He was a county player as well, but he might have even been because a lot of the West Indians, they wouldn't get a county contract every year, right? They would quite often get league cricket. But you're right. Stevenson is the guy. The only caveat I would put on this is he absolutely invented the off cutter as a slow ball as a concept, right? But I think bowlers had always known that if you wanted to bowl one a little bit slower, rolling your fingers made sense. The difference is that, to go back to what we were talking about with leg cutters before, with a little bit of roll on either side, whereas what Franklin Stevenson does is, as you said, he's bowling off spin, and he's like, what happens if I bowl off spin at pace?
Yes.
And that is the big difference at that point. And again, you know, we talked about the drop before. Is it Chris Cairns it's a random
Chris Reed.
Chris Reed. I knew it was a random English wicketkeeper. Someone I'd met
99
as well.
I was, or 97 I was.
Yeah. I think I talked to Chris Reed about this once. But it's the same thing. He thought the ball... I can't even get the ball in my hand. He thought the ball was coming at his head, right? And it just drops down. We've seen a few guys do that before. I was with Mark Chapman when he first faced Dwayne Bravo. And him and Brad Hodge were talking. And Brad Hodge said, what do you think of the slow ball? And he goes, I can't believe how much it dropped. And that's all they were talking about.
Chris Keynes also had a connection with Stevenson. I think he was just...
were they both in knots, weren't they?
Yeah, they were the roommates or something of that. So where this is where he picked up this ball from him.
Yeah, but I think at a certain point, so Craig McDermott bowls it in the '87 World Cup as well. That's after Stevenson, of course. But I think at that point, a few people had it. I think the difference with Stevenson and Cairns, and probably you would now throw in guys like Harshal Patel, Dwayne Bravo, is the ability to rotate their wrist more. Right. So if you've ever followed my work, you'll hear that sometimes you can see in Bravo or in Harshal Patel the years that they're not rotating the balls much because they get whacked. And once they put the rotations back on the ball, so it's not that any batter can run in and see that you're doing this with your hand. Right. They're not hiding that it's a slower ball, but they're putting so many revolutions on it that in some cases, I think Jimenez worked out once that Harshals might even drift away like an off spinner on occasion. Yes. Because he's putting so many revolutions.
So much of revolutions on it.
Yeah.
And he gets a lot of dip, drift, everything.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I would say that I think people misunderstand, because we called them slower balls. What people have misunderstood is that, like, if someone is running into you and they're doing this over and over again, and then suddenly they do that, right? Or back of the hand, like there's no batter in the world that can't tell the difference between that and that, right? That isn't the issue. It's that when it comes down slower, you're used to the pace coming on, so taking the pace off helps. But then the slow balls that survive are the ones that have action on them, that do something, right? And so if you're bowling a back of the hand slow ball, as we said before, it's going up and coming down with all those revolutions. And if you're going side to side with that sort of traditional off cutter slow ball, the Stevenson one, you're getting the ball to drop, but you're also getting it to potentially drift and spin back a little bit, right? As we've seen, not every ball is going to do that, but some are. So that's also going to help you in that situation. So you have, at that stage, you have multiple bites to the cherry compared to your man Glenn McGrath and his split finger. I can't do this. My fingers are so small, but the split finger slow ball, the issue with the split finger slow ball was it didn't do anything.
Yes, it just came out straight.
Yeah. So you can run in like this and then do that late, right? But it just basically comes out a little bit slower. It's like the palm ball. Oh, sorry, I need to put my hand on the camera here. It's like I can't even get it back. But the palm ball where you hold the ball all the way back in your hands, it comes out a little bit slower. But there's no extra rotations on the ball or drop on the ball or spin on the ball or anything else. And that takes us to the knuckleball, right? Because
just one small confirmation I wanted to have basically from you. I read it somewhere like Steve Waugh encountered Stevenson in one of the county matches in 1986 before his debut for Australia. And this is where he noticed the slower ball, and this is how it came to Australian camp. So, like in '87 World Cup, he was also using it, and even McDermott was also using it. So,
Very possible.
is there
yeah.
any truth to this theory, or like because I just
Well,
read it?
what we know is that Stevenson definitely comes with the off cutter first, and then Simon O'Donnell. And from what I've done a bit of research on this, I talked to some old cricket heads in Victoria, and they said the back of the hand slower ball was kind of around for a while. Fascinating. Victorian cricket, I don't know why, had reverse swing before everyone else and never did anything with it, and also had back of the hand slower balls, right? And so, for whatever reason, O'Donnell, probably because he's an all rounder and he's not quite fast enough to do everything else, he starts to bring it in. And there's another bowler who bowled it at that time. So I think they were all thinking about slower balls, and it's very possible that then again you got Steve Waugh, who's not that fast. He's probably looking around. Like if you look at Benny Howell, Adam Hollyoak, Steve Waugh, Simon O'Donnell, even Franklin Stevenson, when he gets older, if you look at those sorts of people, there's probably a reason why they bring out these deliveries and they need to experiment, right? Whereas, you don't. If you're like Curtly Ambrose, he didn't even have a particularly good slow ball, despite that clip of him bowling Ian Healy, which goes viral every 4 weeks. Steve Harmison, another guy famous for one slow ball. Harmy had the shittest slow ball you will ever see. And that's not me throwing my friend under the bus. He will admit that he had the shittest slow ball, right? Because why do you need a slow ball if you're 6'5" and you bowl 90 miles an hour, right?
And that
Whereas
too with the back of the length balls, bounce.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're Steve Waugh and you're what? 5'10", maybe 6 foot. I don't know how tall Steve is, but he's not tall. And you bowl what? 130 Ks on your best day with a breeze, but probably 127 Ks mostly. You probably need those other options, right? And I think that may have come from it. But I hadn't heard that story before. But I really, as I said, I really want to get Stevenson, Glenn McGrath, Steve Waugh and Simon O'Donnell down on paper to kind of explain, because the Glenn McGrath one was the split finger one, which we know he got that from a baseballer directly, Dave
MLB,
Nielsen.
yes.
Yeah. So
I kind of saw that video of McGrath explaining this also.
Yeah.
How he got it.
So again, he didn't invent it; it sort of came to him naturally. But yeah, I think it makes sense for someone like Steve Waugh, right? Even then, if you could perfect 2 slower balls, that's a huge advantage. So it's something that we don't talk about quite a bit in cricket. In the '87 World Cup, it's kind of before we take World Cup seriously. But if you go back, Australia are bowling slower balls everywhere, Deepak, right? And now it's very normal. Can I talk about the knuckle ball? Or are you going to tell me that you got another great story?
No, first, the slow ball thing also, I think it was 2019. MS was still playing for India at that time. And I don't remember. I think it was India versus Australia T20 in India itself. So, or ODI series, I think. I don't remember. 2017 to 2019, I don't remember the year. And that match itself, commentators demonstrated the different type of slower balls the current bowlers are bowling. Those I think that Australian bowler had good 4 type of different slower balls. I think it was.
Was it Andrew Tye or?
No, it was not Andrew Tye. It was Robinson, but not the J Robinson, the other Robinson, who played for Australia during that period. The white
Richardson,
baller.
Jai Richardson.
No, not the Richardson. It was the other Richardson.
Oh, Kane Richardson.
Kane Richardson. Yes. So
he
had
quite a few. It's very.
Yes.
If you think about it, it's actually very uncommon for anyone to have 2. Most bowlers generally go with 1 ball and then 1 slow ball, and it's because it takes ages to perfect. I'm pretty sure if I threw a ball to a random cricketer, they could bowl me all those balls, but they couldn't bowl them at international quality. Right, land them where they need to, maybe do it with a dewy ball or whatever else. So it's actually very, very, it's rare. Like someone like Benny Howell is obviously a freak, but if you move him aside, it's very rare to get someone, if they have a back of the hand slow ball, they won't use their off cutter very much, right? And
exactly,
so
doesn't make sense also.
Yeah, so I remember with Tamal Mills, I think I talked to Smile Mills about this once. I might have interviewed him on Combox way back before it was Combox. I think he said, yeah, my cutter doesn't work as much. So I had to come up with a slow ball that would work, and the back of the hand one did, right? So it's something that, again, we see this in baseball as well. There's a lot of baseball pitchers who just throw 2 pitches over and over again, right? And then you occasionally have the guy who has 7, right? And is just all wacky and everything else. And so it is something that is fairly consistent with fast bowling. So it's very rare for you to be very good at a back of the hand slow ball and a cutter at the same time, or a knuckleball and a cutter. You get good at one thing, and if you're lucky, you're good enough at the other one to use it when you have to use it, if that makes sense. But these balls are not easy to bowl. And like when you talk to bowlers, like sometimes I'll throw them the ball in the commentary box, and they'll be like, yeah, I can't bowl that because of, and they'll explain it, and it'll be, shoulder, back, wrist, fingers, whatever it may be. Actually, a perfect example is the knuckleball, right? So the knuckleball that's a sort of traditional knuckleball that you will see, where you actually have your knuckles on the ball. And there are almost no cricketers who I think who bowl it this way. But there's a couple who've tried it. But actually, the more traditional way in cricket is to do it with your fingers. So it's doing a similar kind of thing, but I can't move on my... Oh, no, that's the right finger. I was like trying to move the finger off the ball, and then I was like, no, I need that finger. You're doing a similar thing with the knuckleball, holding it that way. But I can do this. I don't have big fingers, but for whatever reason, this fits perfectly in my fingers. And I do it to my kids sometimes just to screw them up because he can never hit them, right? And I can do it with the knuckles on, or I can do it with the fingers on. But I know international cricketers who are just like, we just can't do it. It just doesn't work. And our fingers go numb and everything else. But you know why? Do you know why I love the knuckleball, Deepak? Because we just said that slow balls need to do all these magical things in order for them to work. Have you ever watched a super slow motion, like a 16,000 frames per second, 1,600 frames per second shot of a knuckleball?
To be honest, the best knuckleball that I have in memory is bowled by the guy you actually had in one of your shows, Varun Aaron to Shubman Gill. And that knuckleball actually did a lot. So I've seen the slow-mos of that particular ball.
But that would be, so you'd be looking at about what, maybe 300 or 400 frames per second there, right?
Yeah, not more than that for sure.
When you can Google it, you can find it with baseball. There's a couple with cricket. I did a video on Benny Howe where I set him up with a ultra high hummingbird camera. I literally set him up with a guy who had it, and I sent him there, and they filmed all this stuff together. And you can see what it does. But essentially, I can recreate it for you right now. The ball just comes down with no revolutions on it. It's almost hypnotic. I remember showing it to Mark Butcher, Darren Goff, Steve Humston, Gareth Batty, Matt Pryor, and them going, what the hell is this? And I said, that's what it does. It doesn't rotate at all. And that's why the knuckleball...
How did it even swing?
So what? We're not 100% sure, and we need to talk to a better expert on this. But for whatever reason, holding it in that way, every single ball that you throw has backspin on it. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So everything that we do has backspin. Obviously, in cricket, we have a couple of balls with forward momentum, the back of the hand slow ball, the top spinner, right? But generally, every time you throw a ball to a human being, even if it's just chucking it from a little bit, it will have a little bit of backspin on it.
Backspin, yes. It comes naturally.
Yeah.
Because of the thumb?
Yeah. But for some reason, when you hold the ball like this or like this, the backspin just completely disappears and it goes down. And then that lack of backspin, it's almost like, and it's almost like it makes the ball not be sure what to do. So if you watch, there's a great footage of the old knuckleball pitches in baseball where the ball's like jittering around like it's glitching. Right? It's like, it's going straight. Oh, no, it's over here now. And it's fascinating. And you can see it with cricket. Then what has happened in recent times is people realize you can bowl the knuckleball, but get it to swing as well. And that was a real game changer from what I've heard. It's not everyone can control it or anything else, but you then have the ability to just be able to move the seam around a little bit and still get the knuckleball lack of rotations. And I wouldn't say it swings, because as we talked about before, you need backspin on the ball to swing it. But it probably drifts in the air using, again, the fin that we have on top of the ball to be able to get some. I cannot tell you how much I love the knuckleball. Absolutely love it. Obviously, I think Adam Hollyoak was the first guy to try it It had a little bit of success, and Zahir Khan brings it in. But my other favorite thing about the knuckleball is that in baseball, the guys who throw the knuckleball only ever throw the knuckleball. That's what they are. They are knuckleball pitchers. And in cricket, you have a guy coming in one ball going seam up, and then the next ball going knuckleball. I love that. So there's obviously a reason why that happens in cricket, but it means that we've now got another fascinating slower ball that has come into the game.
So, like, did you talk to people like Mike Hussey or Paul Collingwood who got out on these knuckleballs during 2011 World Cup? Like Zahir, I think,
Mate,
took these 2 wickets. So, did you actually discuss this with them? Like,
I didn't
how
talk
was
with,
it?
I haven't talked with those 2 guys, but I have talked with many players who played that knuckleball from Benny Howe. And do you know what they all said? No, he's not doing anything special with the ball, Jarrod. We just missed a straight one. And I went, it's really weird that 500 people have missed the straight one from Benny Howe. Surely something else is happening. So I think for a long period of time, and this would happen with Zahir Khan and probably with Adam Hollyoak as well, no one really knew exactly what was happening because we had no close-ups, right? It's not until 2017, 2018 that we get real super close-ups of the hand.
Exactly. Might be the case.
Yeah. And then we get the close-ups of the hand, but we don't get close-ups of the ball until probably even a couple of years after that. So when we start to get those super slow, then you get to see it. So a lot of the batters, I don't think truly understood what was going on with that ball at that stage. Now batters are much smarter, and I've been told by someone that like there's no point bowling a knuckleball now unless you make it look like it's going to be a normal delivery and then change it at the last second, because people have worked it out. They're used to them now and they'll just smack it out of the park. But when Andrew Ty and those sorts of guys, the sort of more specialist guys were bowling it, they were bowling it really obviously because no one was picking it as well.
Andrew Ty made a career out of it. I think he had got 2 purple caps in IPL, if I remember.
He was a club bowler in Perth, dude.
Yes.
Like, no one ever thought Andrew Ty was going to go on and play for Australia, or let alone make big money overseas. Yes. And again, it shows you if you can adapt to the situation and move on, like Spofford and Andrew Ty, you can do amazing things if you're ahead of the curve, right?
Exactly. Totally agree with you. So can we now have some super chats also, so that I can then maybe hop onto the next slide?
Yeah, you've got another live
at 9, so they can make in like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I think we need to do a part 2 on this, because this conversation at least deserves an hour of content more, because we have not even touched, I would say, like even the 30% of what we could have actually covered, because there's so much of discussion still pending. So we can maybe just have some questions and can do a part 2 of this next week if it's possible.
Oh, one day we're going to do a whole podcast on pissing on your fingers.
So I'll take up this question from Messi fanboy. So, does something look off about Bumrah? He hasn't looked at his best since the Asia Cup.
When was the Asia Cup?
So it was 2000. We saw the finals together, right? At Robbie's place.
Yeah, but September? What month was that? October?
September. 28th of September was the finals.
28th of September. Okay. He wouldn't have played a lot since then, would he, in T20 cricket?
See, he played in England 3 test matches out of 5, and then the test series ended. Like he played the 4th test match in Manchester. That was like after that a month's break, I would say, and then he was back.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, which obviously, because considering the fact that he had a serious injury and then he had an insane IPL again. So the effectivity that we saw in IPL, and people were like kind of, I'm not going to read too much into it. So what's your opinion on this?
I don't think he's 100%. I think he's slightly off. I think he's the kind of bowler who probably needs to be not at 100%, but fairly close to 100% to be successful. Unlike maybe say like a Sean Pollock or a Courtney Walsh type guy. But I'm not, and there's nothing that worries me about that. in the most important moments, I still think he'd want the ball. But yeah, also, I don't like the way they've been using him as much. I think they're bowling him too much with the new ball. I think you use him later on with the older ball. That's where he's at his best. But yeah, I'm probably not 100% thinking that he's in perfect form at the moment, but nothing that I'm concerned about. Look, at any stage, you're going to go through a slight peak or a slight trough, right? And sometimes you go through massive peaks, a massive trough. That's just being a human, let alone a professional athlete.
Maybe we can say like what we saw from 2023 Asia Cup till the Sydney Test match. That was even above par for somebody like Bumrah also. It was like his peak, like similar to what we saw from Virat in 2016 or maybe Sachin from 1998. So like those like brilliant players and still had like all those amazing, insane peaks. And it's like this is what we saw with Bumrah also.
Yeah, I mean, look, at a certain level, I've talked about this before, but his career arc so far is very, very similar to Waqar Younis, right? And eventually, Waqar Younis couldn't do what he used to do, right? For a long period of time, he did what he did and he was brilliant. And then his body just slowed him down. He was still a really good bowler afterwards, Waqar Younis, but he wasn't Waqar Younis anymore. There's a real possibility the same thing happens with Jasprit Bumrah as well. And I think if you look at it, I think of recent times, New Zealand, India have started to move him back to first change as well. So there was a long period of time where he was basically open in the bowling. As I said, I don't think that suits his main strengths. I think he's better in the other position.
And we have seen that data also. Like he is a different beast when he bowls first 2 overs as compared to when he bowls the third over. So even with that, also things changes drastically for him.
I think because he's a rubber ball bowler who bowls with a hard ball, I think specifically bowling with the brand new white ball is probably the toughest thing he would ever have to completely conquer. Now he could still do it. I'm not obviously in one-day cricket he can do it and everywhere else. But I think in T20 cricket, once you get that little bit of lacquer off the ball, he's probably the best bowler that's ever existed in that, 3 to 6 over period. Whereas there are other guys who can do the first 2 overs. You don't actually need to use him for that. So, but again, I think, it may be a slight injury and everything else, but it's hard to consistently be at your peak all the time when you're a fast bowler.
Yes, it's hard
because
to
your body doesn't let you. I mean, I've probably never told you this, but anyone who's listened to Combox will have heard me say this before. When Alex Tudor, he coaches now, and when he gets kids come up and go, I want to bowl fast, he says, okay, be prepared to be sore the rest of your life. Right? That's what it means. That's what being a fast bowler means. Every single time you run in, from now on in, it is going to be sore. Something is going to be aching. There's going to be a pain from somewhere, or whatever that may be. That's what they are doing. And eventually, if you have, Sean Pollock and Waqar Younis are 2 perfect examples of guys who had to change their bodies, right? They had to change the way they bowled in the end because their bodies would not allow that anymore.
Exactly. You shared the story with me when we met in person in Delhi, when you shared about his career path also, like how he ended up being a teacher and all those things. And like we had a complete discussion on this. So we can take the next question also. And if we have one. So I think there are a couple of good comments also which were coming earlier on, so we can maybe have those ones also. So if Rakshit is around, maybe we can take certain questions, couple of questions.
You don't want to take this one?
Oh, this is another one. Oh, sorry. I kind of got confused because the name of the person was saying...
It is the same name. That is fair.
Yeah,
Messi fanboy says, Pakistan writers I respect are making the PCB out to be guardians of cricket when it's just corrupt politicians posturing for their constituents like the BCCI. Yeah, look, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think there is a general... I don't know how much is how much. If you've been following what me and Robbie have been saying, I've been pretty clear in saying that this is a political thing, not a cricket thing, right? But they are being egged on by people who are saying it's also a cricket thing. So depending on who you are talking to, I'm sure you will get, this is 100% political, it's got nothing to do with cricket, or you get someone else going, actually, like, we need to make a cricket stand here as well, right? And so I do think it is slightly complicated. I still think that this decision is only being made because of politics, even if it's one of those things of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here of like, sometimes you 100% are going to do something for one reason, but then on the other side, there's an extra reason that you hadn't thought of, which actually makes it make even more sense, right? I think that's kind of what is happening here. The one reason is politics and nonsense and all that sort of stuff. But secondly, there is an argument, and I've been saying this for a long time, of these other boards actually have power and they have never tried to use it before. And when Bangladesh opened the door, I think Pakistan ran through it, right?
But now Sri Lanka has kind of thrown this banner. So where they've asked Pakistan to kind of compensate them for all the losses they're going to incur because of all these things. So
I don't know about that, by the way. I didn't see the full article because you and I have been busy all day. But my first thought was, well, that doesn't make sense because the ICC automatically pay Sri Lanka to host the cricket. So unless they mean that not as many Pakistani tourists would turn up, but that money
they've given the complete breakup of that. So they have kind of listed down all those things, the long-term economic impact they'll have.
But that's not Sri Lankan cricket. Sri Lankan cricket doesn't make any money out of that.
Yeah, but I think they have given a complete breakdown.
But you see what I'm saying? Again, that's political.
Yes.
Right? That has nothing to do with the Sri Lankan cricket board, right? But look, I haven't read that article, and you have, so I'll defer.
I just saw that graphic only where they had given the breakup of like what all losses they can basically go through if this doesn't happen. So I think it was obviously the tourism money that they lose out on, the long-term impact they had mentioned, and a couple of other things also.
I don't see how this has a long-term impact on Sri Lankan cricket, though. Am I misunderstanding something?
Maybe then they see that even from futures perspective, considering the fact that during Asia Cup 2023 also, like Sri Lanka was the venue for all the India-Pakistan matches. So that option, that possibility maybe goes out of the window for future for them. I don't know.
Yeah, I know, but that's... Am I misunderstanding that, though? That's got almost nothing to do with... Like, that's a bonus anyway, isn't it? Like... That was like when England were hosting Pakistan games and Pakistan decided not to play them in England anymore. That's a bonus that you get to host some other games and you make some money out of it. So,
but like, look, because Sri Lanka kind of supported Pakistan during their tough days.
No, that I get. I'm not disagreeing with the we toured you after the terrorist attacks thing. Like, I'm 100% on that, right? The financial side of it is what I'm talking about. I don't know how much of an impact this will make to Sri Lankan cricket unless one thing happens. That is that the entire rights go down and it won't just be Sri Lanka that makes less money, right? And I think that's also fair for the other boards to say to Pakistan, right? Is for them to say, we are all going to make less money if you keep doing this. That's a perfectly reasonable thing for them to say. It's also a perfectly reasonable thing for Pakistan to go back and going, yeah, but we probably shouldn't be playing India every time anyway, because that's not how sport works, right? You've already, you guys had fixed the fixture. You guys are reliant on this money because you guys fixed the fixture.
But like, to be honest, like, how are we even sure that PC was not even the part of it? Like, how is it not even possible that they were not in the scheme of things when all these things get decided? So
who, the PCB?
Yeah, like
I'm sure they were. I'm saying all the boards would have been involved in this. That's what I'm saying. So if you're a smaller board and you go and you say to Pakistan that you are now going to cost us more money, surely the correct cricket, and we're talking about cricket answers here, not political answers here, but the correct cricket response to that is the only reason you guys were making money is because the fixtures were fixed. And now we are no longer happy to be involved in that. Now that might be a political reason rather than a cricket reason, but it wasn't fair what we were doing. But I've said for over a decade that World Cup fixtures are fixed. We have a fixed sport and no one gave a shit about it, right? And this nonsense from politicians has brought fresh light on the fact that that's what we were doing. It's not just the India-Pakistan game, as I've said before. It's also the Australian-England game. They are more than happy to make sure that these teams play each other to get a little bit extra in the rights, and all those other teams were involved. Things change.
Yeah, exactly, because even that fixture is also pretty regular in majority of the tournaments. So agree on that. So next question, Mr. ADV has So, Char, in a cricket picks, you mentioned that the way MS looked at Test captaincy 2008 to 11 was different. According to your picks, he was best ICT Test captain. Can you elaborate? Judging captaincy goes over my head, especially tests.
Judging anyone's test captaincy goes over everyone's head, by the way. Judging test captaincy is like looking at a duck in the water, right? It's not even actually not even a duck in the water. What's something that just has its head above the water, but its whole body is under the water? Because we don't see like 90% of captaincy, and then someone like Ben Stokes does a couple of good fielding positions, and we're like, he's a genius. And it's like, well, that's not good That's just one. It's like a small part of test captaincy. It's like, oh, he made a bowling change. Yeah, the other bowler was tired. That's why he made the bowling change.
And certain times it's reactive also. It's not even proactive, I would say.
Yeah, I think with Dhoni specifically, if you look at around that early period of time, I think he brought a much more structured, kind of a limited overs knowledge to captaincy. There was an energy and it was much more role definition. Whereas I think before then, a lot of cricket teams, and this is not just an Indian thing, this was around the world, teams would pick their best 11 players and they would go out on the field, and then those best 11 players would try and do their job as best as possible. Whereas I think Dhoni always had that more pragmatic thinking about the way that he looked at cricket. And he's like, great, this is the guy that needs to bowl the middle overs. This is the guy that needs to bowl this spell. This is where this guy we're picking for these conditions. And it gave people that role definition is what we'll be talking about. And it's probably something that Australia's always been really good at. If you go back even through some of the great Australian sides, there's a couple of players in there where you're like, why is that guy there? Like, that doesn't make sense. But they've got a reason why he's in that side. Exactly. Whereas other teams, I've always thought that, the biggest market inefficiency in the history of cricket is that we always pick 3 new ball bowlers for most test matches. It's like, there's only one new ball, guys, and there's only 2 ends. So how is the other guy going to bowl? And I think that was something that that MS Dhoni really started to realize, not that particular issue, but just in general of how am I going to actually shape these things? And so for a little while that worked. The problem with MS Dhoni is that pragmatism, I think, only gets you so far in test captaincy, that eventually it is probably more of a creative field. And his skills in, his ability to keep complex patterns in his head, even though he hasn't even looked at the data, is, it's up there with, Jokic in basketball, or, Perlo in football, and those sorts of guys. They just see patterns that the rest of us don't see. Exactly. But I'm not sure he had that next level to be able to unlock everything else. So it was much more of a limited over style, but I also thought it was quite revolutionary in that I think it allowed teams to start to work out that cricket matches are really about winning each individual battle. And so you need to know that you have the right players in the right format for that. Your best 6 batters and your best 4 bowlers doesn't actually win you games. Exactly. There's a lot more to it than that.
And this is, I think, where even I would say that IPL cricket has evolved the way Dhoni kind of brought all those different elements of captaincy to it. Because like Chepak, for that matter, like use of home grounds, everything. So obviously he has a massive legacy in white ball cricket. But I had a different take about him during some of my videos also, that maybe post 2011 he became a little more reactive, a little more laid back, where they expected things to happen instead of being more proactive the way he was earlier on. And
I'm not,
because just one question, because one context I would like to give here is, Harsha Bhogle once said, like in 2011, when India toured England, Zahir, I think, broke down on day 1 of that Lord's Test match. Yeah. And in Dhoni's head, that series was done, because it just...
Yeah, that's what he said. Back, that's the pragmatism, though, isn't it? That's like the India chase in the World Cup. The SCG chase in the 2015 World Cup, where he's like, "Oh, we're not actually going to win this." Whereas, it's him not diving for balls, where another wicketkeeper will dive anyway, right? You can't take one without the other. And I think, I covered all 8 of those Test matches that you're talking about, from Zahir Khan all the way through to Michael Clarke's 300, I think.
It was in Sydney, and then I think he skipped one of the Test matches also.
But I'm saying I covered that entire series. Yeah, someone else did captain one Test, I think.
Sehwag.
But But the truth is that, yeah, it did get to the point where I do think there was an element of we don't have the right team, right? Whereas I think beforehand, he felt like he did have the right team and he can use it. Again, these are that you get. This is what I said. Captaincy is so complicated, right?
Yes.
Because, I'm not going to say it again, Deepak. I'm not going to talk about the fact that his streak might have been as good a captain as Steve Waugh. It's just that one of them had a great team and one of them had a flawed team, right? Like when it comes down to it, the amount of times you would talk about captaincy and someone would be like, but look at this guy's record. It's like, yeah, Ricky Ponting had a really good record as well. And from what we saw tactically, he was not a particularly brilliant captain. He might have been brilliant in every other way as well.
Steve was never a brilliant tactician, as far as
Steve
I would
was a
say.
terrible tactician, I would argue.
Yeah, because I've seen
just put more slips in. The Steve Waugh's answer to everything was maybe 7 slips.
Maybe 7 slips. Exactly. This is what I was about to say. So, Jeevantha has a question. So, completely unrelated. Has Sanath become underrated as a coach or as a player?
Certainly not as a coach. I think it's just they had 2 great batters right after him, right? And Murali was around. I just think there's so much greatness around him. Sometimes you're the guy that misses out. And I think in Sanath's case, we've forgotten
ODI
about
cricket, still he is one of the best all-rounders, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing. That was his best format, right? And that's the least important format now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that honestly, no one talks about Michael Bevan anymore either, right? Like there's a certain point where you move on. Apologies to Nathan Bracken, but his career may not get remembered because he did all of his best work in a dying format.
Yes.
Certainly dying in terms of narrative. Maybe also dying in terms of cricket.
Yes. So, Soham Chatterjee has this question. So, enjoyed Gurp, Mayank and Ashok versus Namibia tonight. We couldn't see that because that match happened at the time when we were doing this live. So
yeah, I saw a little bit of the under-19 game, but I'll go back. We both have access to MV Play, so we can go back and watch any game. We just miss some of them live.
Yes. So hopefully we are done with the super chats, or are we still left with them? So Dhruv has come up with one. I hate when India and Pakistan are weighed on the same level.
But they're not weighed on the
in
same
terms
level.
of skill.
When has anyone weighed them on the same level? I can't remember a single time in the last 10 years of cricket when anyone's done that. On the field or off the field.
Agree. Totally agree with this. So I think we've still left with certain questions, or we can just call it a day because
I can't see. Can you see more?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're done. We're done. Rakshit's told we're done. You've got another podcast to do.
Yeah, like 5 minutes from now. So I'll just
go to the toilet. Put your put your balls away, go to the toilet, and then come back with your Hindi hat on.
Yes, and lovely interaction. As I said, we still need to do the second part of it.
We never got to the wobble ball or reverse swing.
Yeah, multiple things. Yeah. Even, I think we didn't talk about the stuff that how the old ball used to swing and all those stuff. A lot of other things also. Not the conventional swing with the old ball also. So a lot of other things also. So
definitely. We'll be back next time.
So do you want to? Yeah. So I would like you to send certain closing remarks and just close it off because you do that really well. So I'm kind of new to that. So
what? How do you normally end podcasts? By just taking your pants off and walking away?
No, because I do it in a very abrupt manner. But then Rakshit was telling me people follow a certain pattern. So I'm just kind of learning that.
I make that pattern up every single time. But if you like what we're doing, obviously you can support us on Combox. You can find Deepak on First Umpire, where he only does English with me, apparently. All other English is banned, he said over there. And I'm the only person who doesn't break the algorithm. But it's mostly in Hindi over there. But you've got the Combox Hindi channel as well, which you can have a look at, which I think Robbie and Irfan have been on as well. But support us at Combox. I think the best thing to do at the moment, if you want to help us out, is to go to combox.tv and go on the waiting list. Deepak is designing an app that we will be bringing out soon. So if you're interested in Combox at all, go over and do that, and you'll be a beta tester for the app coming up. But at the moment, find us on social media, subscribe, do all those things. And the most important thing, as always, is tell your mum about us. We'll see you next time. Cricket fans are smarter than ever before. But what they're offered is clickbait, lazy punditry, and SEO noise. Combox is for people who actually love the game. Smarter analysis, real conversations. Combox, the game lives on.